On this week's episode of the Crowdfunding Nerds, we discuss ad copy, how to get inspiration from DVD covers, how to build immersion, and more. Let's get into it. Hey folks, this episode is brought to you by Hero Time Manufacturing. That is Hero Time, the numeral 1.com. Hirsch Gleck has been a regular on our podcast. We highly recommend his services. He is a man of integrity. Hero Time, they can make anything. They've got competitive pricing, and they even do game prototypes. So make sure to check out Hero Time, numeral 1.com. A link is in the show notes. And if you use the code Crowdfunding Nerds 101, you can get a 3% discount on your production through them. Let's get back into the episode.
Game begin.
Let's go.
I used to be a marketer like you until I took an arrow to the knee.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined as always by Sean. And today we're actually here to talk about ad copy and how to make ad copy interesting so that people actually want to read it, and so that the ad copy actually makes you money in the end, or gets email subscribers and that sort of thing. Sean, you had a really interesting story to kind of start us off. Would love to for you to share that.
Sure, yeah. Well, today I was in the business of just getting up new ads for one of our clients, and this particular game was about pirates, and it's obviously inspired by something like Pirates of the Caribbean. It has this sort of fantasy elements to it. And I've done this before, but it just kind of came to my mind to do it again today, and we can discuss it here. But I've noticed that the back of DVD boxes or even Blu-ray boxes, they've got really good ad copy, because I suppose back in the day when, there was DVD stores or rentals, you would look at all these covers of films or even video games, and they would catch your eye, and then you'd pick it up and turn it around. And as you turn it around, that's your ad. That's them trying to sell the product to you so that you would rent it or buy it. So they're actually a great source of inspiration to generate ad copies. If you're stuck, if you need even just some words. So for Pirates of the Caribbean, for example, had the word swashbucklers, and I was like, oh, that's a good word. I can include that. And had something about idyllic pirate adventures. Like, okay, I can include that as well. So yeah, I suppose I just want to talk about maybe how you can kind of plagiarize or find inspiration from things which clearly work. You've got, big films like Pirates of the Caribbean, they've got huge marketing departments, put millions behind every little detail. So you can guarantee that the back of that box, everything has been finely attuned and adjusted. So it's a great starting point for inspiration for ad copy, and to even get ideas. Like the back of the box talks about certain directors and what they had previously worked on. So maybe that's something you can say, oh, from the developer who brought you, this game that everyone knows or whatever. So that's stuff you can include in your ad copy.
That's pretty cool. It reminds me of Blockbuster Video back in the day. I don't know if you had any of those in the UK or in South Africa, but we had them all over the US. And it was the best store. It was like Christmas every time you would walk in there. And the way, like, I want to say it was like VHS tapes first, and then DVDs next, and then Blu-ray, of course. And then, Netflix put everyone out of business. But back in the day, you would walk into a Blockbuster Video and you would look around the store, because the best movies, it was kind of like alphabetically organized in loosely, but around the edges would be the new movies, and you would look and see which shelves were entirely filled. So they had shelves that, floor to ceiling were stacked with different movies, but there would be one entire shelving unit dedicated to whatever movie was hot that particular week. It's like, oh, the release of Gladiator came out. Gladiator came out, and like every row of this entire, shelf cabinet was filled with Gladiator. Well, what they would do is they would put like a wallpaper of the movie right behind the DVDs. So if the DVDs were out, you would just see the wallpaper and, of Gladiator or whatever the movie was. And it was so often all those movies were gone. It was like the quantity of space they gave those movies told you which movies were the best. So people would flock to those like sections first, and all the movies would always be gone. And every once in a while you get really lucky and one would be left, and you're like, yes, I get to watch Gladiator now or whatever. But that was funny, way back in the day. But I remember so often I would turn the thing around and read everything that was happening on the back. And it really was something that was very well written, that was tested, that was, I mean, you could tell they test marketed this copy and probably tested it against a bunch of, internal focus groups and other things like that to see what was most attractive about these things. And so I think that, if you can ever take lessons from Hollywood, positive lessons, rather than, how to, lose yourself in fame and fortune and
tag
get
IPs,
hooked on drugs and have a
tag beloved
terrible life.
IPs.
Yeah. Seriously. If there's a positive lesson learned, it's that Hollywood is a really, really powerful marketing machine, and the actual content that they produce is, the text content is very interesting. And so I think people tend to be nowadays more cynical of like modern takes of like movie reviews and other hype machine things that you'll read on Facebook. It's like, how Snow White is the best movie ever, and critically acclaimed and whatever. And people tend not to believe things like that. But back in the day, you would, and I say back in the day, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, you would read the back of the box, and there would be no like there's like no need for cynicism as you're reading the back of the box. And I think that the ads that we place on Facebook are kind of the same, where if you're doing your job correctly, then people will kind of be pulled into this world. You're not trying to lie to them. Nobody thinks you're, I mean, I'm speaking very broadly and generally, but people that look at board game ads are not thinking, oh, this person might just be lying to me. It's a pirate themed game. It might not even be pirate themed and whatever, right? They're not thinking that. They're like, immediately go to a place of like, would I be interested in this? Right. And that is first of all, it's a really cool thing that in crowdfunding, you have people just genuinely interested in what it is that you are presenting. And that is a huge, huge hurdle that has been cleared, is like an open mind. When somebody looks at a Facebook ad, they have an open mind for what it is that they're looking at. And I think that so often people just squander the opportunity to share what their thing is and what makes it interesting. We always talk about the hook and you need to, pull them into your world and that kind of thing. But just from an even more broad perspective, when you zoom out and stop thinking about marketing, the mindset of the customer reading the ad is that they're genuinely interested in what you have to say for a few seconds, until they're not, until they decide, oh yeah, that's not something I'm interested in, or whatever. I think that's really an incredible place to begin. And there's so much potential to work with right there. And whenever I see something like, I don't know, like there are so many marketing companies out there that just use AI or generate tons and tons of ads and images and text, and none of them are any good. um and it's like they're just really kind of just using the picture of that you give them and saying, yeah, here's something you might like, and that's the only thing that a user has to go off of. But I really feel like a good headline that explains the hook of why your game is interesting or why your product is interesting, and a text box that is above the ad that shares a little bit about why the right people might be interested in the product, just goes such a long way to providing context for what the image is that looks interesting. And I think that people sometimes overthink marketing, where they're like, oh, I need to say this in the exact right way, in the exact perfect way. Just help me understand what I'm looking at, I think, is the first thing, right? And then, I'll decide if I'm interested or not. But people just are like, here's a thing, click this. It's like I'm a dumb chimpanzee looking at a screen, ready, having two buttons. One is learn more and the other is skip, and I have 50-50 chance to just press learn more because I'm a stupid, human. So I think that sometimes, I don't know, Sometimes other marketing companies make me mad.
Yeah, well, I certainly think AI is going to be the death of a lot of businesses or brands because it's something that I think you've said before is that maybe the overuse of AI really kind of signals to someone that like they're taking shortcuts here, where else are they taking shortcuts? And I do think if you're reading something and suddenly you can work out, oh, this was written by AI because it doesn't make sense, and no human would write this because it literally does not make sense. That's really going to leave a bad taste in people's mouths, and you could risk really damaging your brand and damaging your company's reputation. So I think AI is a tricky one. I think it's a two-edged sword. I think if some people can obviously use it and it can help them, but I think in a lot of ways it can probably do a lot of damage. And I actually think it comes to this idea where I think it's going to start replacing people's ability to think independently. I think people are going to say, "Oh, I don't want to exert my brain and actually think. I'm going to just use AI. AI would tell me how to think."
Yeah.
And you kind of see it's interesting because if I was to do a search like Pirates of the Caribbean, you find IMDb. There's no marketing messaging on IMDb. It's just kind of factual. So you don't get that same experience with the product with the DVD shop back in the good old days. Even on like Netflix or something, you're only getting like a little thumbnail, a short description, and then like it's all visual. Like it starts auto playing parts of the film, and it's like we've moved away from a society where people read and think. Whereas before, it's like I have to read the back of the box. I have to think.
Yeah.
No, nobody has time for reading and thinking anymore. Just show them visuals and a little thumbnail. That's good enough. Let's go.
Yeah.
So I think AI is kind of the next step in that same philosophy of, making things as easy to access as possible.
Yeah, but then when you look and when you consider, going back to what I was sharing about the cynicism that one approaches Hollywood with nowadays, anytime something comes out on Netflix, it might look cool, but I will never watch something unless I first research it. And first thing I do is I check IMDb. I look at the score, the movie score. If it has a score under 5, I never ever watch it, because I know that like the average amount of user reviews, generally you're going to have people that love movies, people that hate movies, but the average user review of any show needs to be at least 5.5 for me to even consider looking at that show, and then if it is, under 6.5, I'm like, well, maybe if it's the type of show I'm interested in, I'll watch it, but if it's like 7, 8 stars, then I'm looking at a show that I might not normally watch, but because it's highly rated, I will, like, for example, I don't know, 12 Angry Men is like a show that I actually had never heard of, because it's an older show. I think it's all in black and white. It's been a little while since I've watched it, but it's all in black and white, and it's about 12 jurors that are 11 of them are ready to convict a person guilty of murder. He just seems like he did it and all this stuff, but then one guy is like the contrary one, and kind of over time convinces everybody that this guy actually might be innocent. And it turns out, I don't want to spoil it, but it was a very highly rated movie for a reason, and one I would have never watched unless I saw that it was so highly rated by the audience. And it's like we as a society are willing to trust each other, but we're not really willing to trust what media shares. And that is more and more true the younger and younger a person is, the less and less they trust what they're being fed, And I think that the danger, if you will, of just accepting whatever it is that you read is nowadays, I really probably don't even need to explain how, there's fake news everywhere, and there's things that are purposefully meant to disinform. Like actually, the other day I saw an article that talked about Noah's Ark being found in the mountains of Ararat in modern day Turkey, where, I'm like, well, whatever, that's just some fake news meant to like trick the Christians so they look like idiots again, right?
Or
It's
get
like
clicks. With like
Yeah, so,
all these ads on the website.
yeah, and you read about like, oh, they found Egyptian armor in the Red Sea. It washed up to shore or whatever. It's like, oh, that's interesting. And then, of course, fake, you know. And actually, this article is real. It was a real article. It was a I mean, there are a lot of legit studies on this area that is exactly as wide and long as the boat was described in Noah's Ark. It's got twice as much organic matter in the set in the mass. It's got satellite imagery of, or not imagery, but what do you call it? Like geological satellite imagery, I'm just going to say, because I don't know the right term, of like 3 decks of, you know, on a ship. So you've got 3 I don't know, like hollowed out caverns, you know, one on top of another. It's like, dude, that's exactly like Noah's Ark was described, and it's kind of where Noah's Ark was said to have landed and all that. And it's like, but I immediately am cynical of all of this. It's like, you know, it could just be fake, you know, and it gets syndicated far and wide like it's true, but then, you know, we find out it's fake, you know. And I think a certain dose of cynicism is really, really healthy for just surviving nowadays. But there are certain places that you don't need to be cynical, and that is when you get just general audience scores. That's why scores on Board Game Geek mean something. You know, for board games, it's like if a game generally has high ratings, it's good, right? And so, you know, that's usually because the audience says it's good, right? And so
You kind
anyway,
of
I
see
just,
this
yeah,
happening with the board game industry as well, and a lot of people are quite cynical of paid reviews. And I suppose it's the same. You know, film critics or film reviews would have gone and watched films, but then maybe, you know, film studios are like, oh well, we'll give you a, you know, early access screening, and that kind of influences their view of the
yeah,
film. And uh, I think that can. And now we kind of have, like, I don't trust any film critic at this point,
no,
and the reviews. And I hope that doesn't happen with the board game industry, but that could start suddenly creeping in. I think that's why a lot of board game influencers, so to speak, are quite clear. It's like, oh, this is a sponsored review. I was paid to cover this, and just keep that in mind. You know, they kind of have all those disclaimers. That's probably coming from the film industry, where, and I suppose even the video game industry with the whole early access stuff, that has sort of maybe tainted people's minds or perceptions of reviewers.
yeah. And so, you know, when you think about all of that and you then apply to how we think about advertising when you're just writing your own Facebook ad
We
for
do
your
not use
product.
AI.
Yeah, yeah, don't use AI.
We
Honestly, I
we
think
just copy old DVD covers. That's what we do.
that's our secret. Oh, you ruined us, Sean. Um, no, but I think that AI is a tool. We use it in our business all the time for things like SEO marketing. We write a lot of articles using AI. We prompt the AI to write an article about mold remediation in Carlsbad, California, or whatever. You know, it's like there's a. It is not fun to write about mold remediation anywhere. And Carlsbad is a really nice city, but mold remediation in Carlsbad is just not the thing that I care about. You know, and not the thing I want to be an expert in either. So when I'm writing an article to rank someone for mold remediation in Carlsbad, I love AI. It's so useful. And you can take something, generate, you know, a 500-word article, put a blog post together pretty quickly, and it's generally good content, but it's usually content for Google because most people don't care about mold remediation. And so the tool is very useful. It saves a lot of time. It allows us to leverage time, but you can't use it to think for you. That's the
Yeah.
difference. You can use it to save time, like on busy work, but if you're expecting AI like ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, Grok, or I forget all the other ones out there, but like the AI cannot think for you. It can only respond to things that you input, and a lot of the time it just straight up lies. Like every AI will make things up and lie. And if you're trying to write content meant for the consumption of, like, for people's consumption, they will find those things and be like, yeah, this is dumb. But if you take an article, like for us, like we have the back cover of Around the Table magazine, the Gamma magazine, and we always write an article like every quarter for them. and we'll take an article, we'll always write it, it'll always be too long, and we'll have AI shorten that thing into 550 words or less, and it manages to say things in a more succinct manner, but I've done the thinking though, and or you've done the thinking because you write the article, and um, I think that's a really important difference. Now, when you have a cool product and you want to use
You haven't
AI,
been
like
using the articles I've been writing. I put my heart and
Chat
soul into
GPT,
those.
Sean. Yeah, it's like robot Sean.
It's like, wait, I didn't write this.
Hey, crowdfunding nerds, if you're looking for an awesome fulfillment partner for US shipping, you should really consider Bridge Distribution and Fulfillment. I personally use them. I've used them for multiple projects. They do such a great job. They also can fulfill Amazon orders and get you prepped for Amazon and their warehousing team. I have been so happy using Bridge Distribution. I'm really proud that they're sponsoring us. If you reach out, bridgedist.com, that's bridgedist.com, let them know we sent you. All right, now back to the show.
Oh, yeah. So I think that it's definitely a tool that needs input, and the input of a marketer is so far as I see it, invaluable because AI can't think about how your customers will react or how your customers perceive things. It'll just write things in whatever tone you tell it to write. And I think that you need to really think about what makes me interested in a product like this, or hopefully you've done research and your customers have told you what makes them interested, and you can kind of start from there. But AI just won't solve that problem for you at all. Maybe 5 years from now or 2 years from now or whatever, maybe it will, and you can input like your customer avatar, and it will have all of these additional data points that it connects, and just so happens to write the most amazing thing. But not today.
I know
Right.
right now, like there's a huge push on the Meta Ads Manager to push AI prompts and things. I just turn them all off. But no, it's garbage. They don't
It's
want
always
them.
worse.
It is. So it is always worse. So, but you know how you work out what's the best AI?
How?
You turn them against each other. So what I did is I got Google Gemini, and I got Bing, the Bing chat, and I got them to play chess against each other. So it's like, hey, let's play a game of chess. Sure. This is, you just open two tabs and you just copy the moves one from another. So I was able to work out that Gemini
You're going to start a nuclear war.
Yeah, they'd be frying. I worked out that Gemini is better at chess than Bing. And he just starts trolling Bing. Say, by the way, that wasn't me. It was actually Google Gemini you played against. How do I make you think about that? Like, how does it make you feel that Gemini is better than you, Bing?
That is funny. Was that
So, yeah.
like what, 6 hours of your life? Just troll them, troll the AI.
Yeah, it's like,
that's awesome.
So how do you think Bill Gates would feel?
Yeah,
with you letting down the name of Microsoft like this.
So then, I guess refocusing the topic back to article or to writing ad copy and taking something interesting, like why do you think that pulling stuff off a DVD and kind of leveraging that to make an interesting ad, I guess, why do you think the ad itself is interesting to a consumer? What do you think they're thinking when they look at your ad? And like how does their mind work when they kind of diagnose the ad that you wrote about that pirate game?
Maybe one thing about games that separates it from other things is that games are about fun. So you've got to try and present what you're doing in a way that's either exciting or intriguing without being over the top. So I think the first thing you have to answer is, what is this? So the first thing is, this is a game, right? This is a board game. This is a tabletop game. It's a video game. And then the next question is, well, why should I care? And well, this is a game all about pirates. And if you love pirates, well, then guess what? This is the perfect game for you. And you're basically saying that, and I'm not going to say that directly, but I'll put on the kind of the voice of a pirate and speaking pirate speak,
right?
And that the headline is walk the plank, laddie.
Yeah.
And people who love pirates love that stuff, and it's fun. So I think that's key. It's really explain what it is, build intrigue or excitement, and to try and be fun. I know that's kind of a very abstract term, but you are in the business of selling games, so it should communicate the essence or the atmosphere your game evokes. So whether it's a very serious kind of crime, solving game, or whether it's a really, lighthearted, goofy, cartoon fighting thing, you should kind of try to communicate that mood in your imagery and in your ad copy as well.
I think that's so useful, so valuable. I always think about what does a customer think when they are looking at this, when they're digesting information. What were they immediately thinking before? And it's all I use the analogy sometimes when I talk to clients of like they're arguing about politics, they're spying on their frenemies, they're looking at their grandkids' photos, they're engaging in the fandoms that they enjoy, and then they scroll down and they see your ad, and like you're interrupting, and this on Facebook, so you're interrupting what it is that they were doing, and most of the time they're just blowing off steam, or just it's a momentary distraction. They can't help but look at their phone and see like notifications, like Pavlov's dogs, make their mouths water.
Salivate.
They have to, yeah, they have to
I'm
make sure
being controlled by my phone.
I can stop anytime I want. I just don't want to stop right now. And so you're interrupting that kind of flow of thought. And really what happens is they think, oh, what's that? It's like the same mentality as if someone were at my house. Hey, I invite them into my house for dinner, and then they see my vitamins on the counter and they're like, oh, what's that? Then my job isn't to try to sell them the vitamins. It's to answer the question. It's like, oh, those are the vitamins that I take to be healthy and whatever. And if they're interested, they'll ask more questions. But what you don't want to do when someone walks into your house is try to sell them vitamins that were on your counter. That's not the main thing. Like, you're there to fellowship with them. You're there to share a meal, whatever, play games, whatever you were planning on doing. And you don't want to, you want to keep the main thing the main thing. You don't want to side or derail your hangout with a friend over some vitamins or something, right? It's like, you need to buy vitamins before we can move to step 2, which is dinner, or a movie or a game.
That's why you should just wear a shirt that says "Buy my vitamins" with a QR code.
That's right. Just tattoo that
what's
thing
this,
right
this
on
shirt?
your forehead.
What's this? Oh, you noticed? Oh, this is nothing. But if you like, you take your phone out.
Yeah, I think the same is true for ads. So they're not. It might not be a friend. They're not in your house, but they are exploring, doing what it is they want to do there. On Facebook for whatever reason, or on Google for whatever reason, searching for something. And then you are here and you interrupt them. The first thing I think mentally a customer thinks is, what's that? They try to just understand what it is, and make sure to explain what it is. Give them context for the image, the visual aid that you're using to showcase what your product is and why it's awesome. And don't try to like over explain. I think a lot of the time people use big adjectives, like this revolutionary board game with never before seen game play, and with infinite replayability. It's like, you just described nothing to me, so I don't understand what it is, and therefore I shall keep scrolling. And it's like, oh, the new Marvel movie Thunderbolts, blah blah blah. It's like the next article, and then I'm interested again. It's like, oh, I'll read about Thunderbolts. I didn't like Thunderbolts, by the way. Thought it was very forgettable.
I think you also be careful using maybe archaic words or words that aren't really in the popular vernacular, because some people might not know what that is. So clarity is also important. So when I was writing this, pirate stuff, it was very easy to kind of whip up old vernacular. So I guess I don't know if people even know what that word means. So let's just change that. And I can't remember one that's come up now. Or
yeah,
I had like rascal, and I was like, oh, I don't know if people know what rascals are.
I do think that there's a lot to be said for clarity versus embellishment. It's like, you can make something so highbrow people don't understand it, and then they don't know what it is. Same problem. I think Americans, we have like an average vocabulary of 3,000 words, like total vocabulary of all the words I know. That's why I say it's awesome. Far too much. because I actually don't know other words to express what I mean, you know? And, I think that it's something that you want to consider trying to kind of write. In fact, I think many novels and other, most of the popular novels write, and I believe it's a 6th grade reading level. Most novels out there, I think Harry Potter does this, Lord of the Rings does not do this. And Wheel of Time, I think, got close to that, and other very large and very popular novels and book series, they all write at about a 6th grade reading level. It's not because I can't read at a college level reading. I it just is work. It's work on my brain, and it's not easy to understand. And that's why Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, with its 900 characters that you're introduced in the first 3 chapters, is like a little too much. So I think that even though that obviously became a thing, it's pretty big, but I think that ads need to be meant. They're meant just so that you can understand. Right? So that you can understand.
Yeah, I think
Um,
presidential speeches do this, where they use very kind of, I wouldn't say watered down English, but it is designed very, the words they use are very particular, not to kind of, so that anyone can understand them. And I think that's sort of what you're aiming for with ad copy as well. Just think of presidential speeches.
Yeah, actually, along the same lines, if you look at any world leader that gives a presentation, they're oftentimes, they have, you know, lots of speechwriters. They have professionals that are at the top of their game helping these people give those presentations. They didn't put, Donald Trump doesn't put together his own slide deck or whatever. Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel doesn't do that, or the Crown Prince from the UAE, or all of those things are fresh on my mind because that's where Trump went. One of our clients is a fancy high level executive a minister in the United Arab Emirates, and it was super fun talking to him about how busy they were, like when Trump made the Middle East trip. It was just a really fun random conversation. But these people don't write their own, or don't do their own PowerPoints. And when you look at the PowerPoint, it is so simple. It's like a white background with no image, with like one word on it. It's like, and then an image by itself with no words on it, and then the image with like 2 words beneath it, and that kind of, it's just so simple. There's such an emphasis on making things easy to understand, and I think that we oftentimes overthink our marketing and try to get people sold before they actually even know what the full thing is that they're buying. And the reality is that people buy things that they believe are custom tailored to their preferences. And if every single person that saw your ad tried to buy your product, you wouldn't have enough product to satisfy that demand. And so you really need to be very specific about who is like this product perfect for. And a lot of the time when I hear people say, "Oh, everyone or anyone," you're immediately losing me, because everyone that plays games, anybody that loves chess, it's so broad, and you have not identified who your person really is.
You
You have to
also,
get
I think
specific.
maybe the thing which people don't think about is that you're now positing your product with something else which could be better than your product. So people could
Yeah.
very much look at your games like, oh, it's like anyone who likes chess. Like, well, chess looks better than this, or
Right.
this looks good, but I'd rather just play chess because I know how to play it. So
Yeah.
that you've actually unintentionally introduced an objection that you could have avoided if you just didn't make that comparison
Yeah.
to
It's
your
like when
product.
people tell me their game is like Catan mixed with Gloomhaven. It's like, well, I like Catan, I like Gloomhaven. Why wouldn't I just play those?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a dangerous line to walk. If
Now,
you
if it was
like
like
this,
from
you
the
might like that.
designer of Gloomhaven or from the illustrator of Catan or whatever that's meaningful. It's like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
I like that thing, so I like this.
Yeah, or maybe I was talking the other day about Magic the Gathering and Ascension, where Magic the Gathering is a you have to build a deck and then you play the game. And Ascension is there are many deck builders out there, but Ascension is, I think, one of the games that probably ported Magic the Gathering mechanics to a deck builder best. And it was by a former Magic the Gathering professional, Justin Gary, and it really had a lot of it convinced a lot of people to buy. And the reason was not because if you like Magic you'll love this. It's like this gives you the feeling of playing Magic, and it's like it's quick, and it's that deck building concept that people love. You get to enjoy that, but you get to play this in like 20 minutes while you're waiting for everyone to arrive before a tournament or something. It's perfect because when you're playing Magic, sometimes games can go 10 minutes, sometimes they can go an hour, and you really need to make sure that you have something that's a filler game that's like very interesting that you can play in the middle. Or what if somebody that you really like hanging out with doesn't play Magic? It's like that's a huge problem. It's actually a huge problem in the Magic community. In fact, being a former Magic player, I know that the only thing that Magic players like to talk about is Magic the Gathering. And if you don't talk Magic, they're like, a lot of people will just try to like ignore
Get on
you.
my level, bro.
They don't even say that. They just like turn away and like, all right, that person's talking stuff I don't care about, And it's funny. But what if you really like Magic and like you've got somebody that you enjoy that doesn't know how to play? It's not easy to teach someone, and it's certainly not very fun when you're playing with somebody that's like got training wheels on and you could just smash them, and you've got your infinite damage combo in your hand, and they don't even know how to use a counter spell that's in their hand, and
Well,
so
that soiled my experience with StarCraft. I had a friend back in high school who tried to get me into StarCraft, and I was familiar with it and not really into RTS games. And we played just online, and it was just like my first game. I died in like 20 seconds. Someone like boarded into my base, and I was like, "What is happening?" It's like, "Oh yeah, that can happen." It's like, okay, well, it's not exactly fun for like a newcomer to just be trounced in 20 seconds. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's like I don't know, like a toddler trying to get onto a tricycle and someone like races past them on like a bike. Like, okay. But I think the concept of using other games and then improving upon them. So what came to my mind when we sort of discussed that is, in terms of your Magic illustration, was World of Warcraft. What came before was EverQuest, and I think it was Ultimate Online. I think both those games were rather punishing. So if you died, it was a huge kind of setback. And World of Warcraft kind of removed that. You died, it wasn't really much of a setback. You kind of just run back to your body. It was a bit inconvenient. And some of your armor was damaged only in PvE. In PvP, there's no damage done to your armor. So I think they kind of removed that one thing that they obviously didn't like about those games, and obviously it caught on. So I think if you're able to improve or enhance, and maybe it's my I have a huge tendency to just kind of homebrew a lot of stuff. So, actually, I don't like this. I prefer it this way. That's how I play it. Maybe it's in my nature, but I think if you're going to be a game designer, you have to constantly think like that, and that's going to be the thing which makes your product unique and stand out. It's like, oh yeah, it's not. It doesn't compete with this other product. In fact, it was inspired by this, and I think I've done something different that I think people who like that also like this. But saying it in an ad probably isn't too effective because that's too complicated to communicate in an ad. And that's probably something best used for email marketing or for a vlog later down the road, like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But for your ad, you might want to avoid that.
Definitely, yeah. And you don't have to be like, World of Warcraft is like EverQuest and Ultima Online, but better. Instead, and it was better, back in the day, like that thing, I spent a lot of time on that and really enjoy it and have fun memories of it, and but the reason I was convinced it wasn't because it was like those other things. It was because, would you like to, kind of at the time this was very innovative and new. It's like, it's like you're playing Second Life. It's this epic fantasy where you grow in power over time, just exactly probably like EverQuest and Ultima Online, but you're doing it in a world that's really interesting, that is not taking itself super seriously, that is more casual friendly. I remember hearing stories from I used to go to this internet cafe for gaming. We would play Dota and other things like that, World of Warcraft. And this guy would always be playing EverQuest. And he showed me this dagger. It was like, here's this dagger I got from a dragon or whatever. It took us 24 hours to kill it. Like, really? Like 24 straight hours of like running at a dragon and fighting and getting wiped on the floor and having to respawn and go back. Like, I don't even understand if this guy could have been like lying through his teeth. I have no idea. But when I was
Trying to
playing
impress
Dota,
you.
yeah, right. It's like I'm playing Dota and like not understanding what this is. That just did not sound interesting. But like, venturing through a land, completing quests, and just having fun with friends, that sounded really cool. And I think that the major win of World of Warcraft for its time was that it was meant to be played together, and it was meant to be kind of a very social experience. And it wasn't this thing where you had to, at least I didn't perceive it to be something that you would have to invest like your entire life and life savings and plan into to be any good. It was like a game that you could play and get out of it what you wanted, sort of thing.
Mhm.
And I don't know, maybe that's exactly like Ultima and EverQuest, but it sure didn't feel like that at the time. The way that they marketed, they just showed the world. They showed what it was, not telling me what it was. They showed me what it was. And I think that's a huge, huge difference, especially in ad copy. If you're trying to explain what your thing is, just don't explain everything. Like, I always use the analogy of Harry Potter. Sean, have you seen the first Harry Potter movie?
Mhm.
You've seen them? So when Harry Potter goes to Hogwarts, he gets on these carriages that have no horses, and they fly and that kind of thing. The movie does not pause. To my recollection, it does not pause and explain to you what happens, like why these carriages can fly. Can you recollect anything like that? I think in movie 5 or something, it's like they kind of go into that, but that was or book 5. That's a long way off. And I think all great stories, they pull you into the world and they do not try to explain themselves at
Mhm.
every step of the way. You're just there. And so I think with your ads, saying, "Our matey, swab the poop deck," or whatever, unfurl the sails, fire the cannons. I don't know, whatever pirates say. That was very French pirate. So they just like thrust you into the world, and now there you
Mhm.
are. And so I think that it really kind of goes well with what I need to understand, like when I'm playing a game, is who am I, what am I doing, and like why does it matter? Or maybe an alternative question would be, how do I win? um if I understand those things, then I have context for everything else. It's like, okay, I'm some low level pirate in a galley and the captain was just killed, and everyone is, there's chaos on the ship, someone needs to take control, and there's another ship that's trying to sink you. It's like, okay, now I know who I am. I know why the consequences of my actions matter, and I know how to win, or I know, why. Yeah. So, um, that's kind of what I think a really good ad just helps you understand really quickly. And
You're
I think
creating
that's
some
where a lot
tension.
of, yeah, yeah.
Maybe I should read the actual text of this so people understand. So it's from one of our clients, Magpie Games. They've got a role-playing game called Rapscallion. And you play as pirates in a tabletop adventure. So I have two ad copy. And again, I use Pirates of the Caribbean. So if you dig that out, you could kind of see how I was inspired to write this ad copy. But this might just give people an example of ad copy, and they could obviously maybe get ideas from this or incorporate some of it into their own things. So I have two primary texts, and the first one here is monstrous creatures, deadly whirlpools, and mutinous pirate crew are the least of your worries, and Rapscallion, the tabletop role-playing game. The law be fast on your heels, and there be cursed treasure to track before your swashbuckling rivals get their rickety hands on your gold. It says,
That's
then
awesome.
then it ends with a question. So it says, "Are you ready to set sail amidst the great sea, laddie?" I'm having trouble reading it because I had like old English pirate voice here. Are you ready to set sail amidst the great sea, laddie? So that's kind of the end. And then there's a link to the build. So it kind of explains the world: monstrous creatures, deadly whirlpools, mutinous pirate crews, and then being chased by the law. So these are kind of building tension within the ad copy. It's using words like rickety hands, swashbuckling. So all these kind of evokes imagery of the kind of tone of the experience.
Yeah. And what I don't care about is, and it is a tabletop role-playing game, so there is some context already that I'm glad you named what it was. But if it was a board game, I'll tell you what, one thing I don't care about right away is how long the playtime is, what the player count is, what the age appropriate, is.
How many times you can play it.
Yeah, it's like those things are things that I will care about later. They're necessary. Like I don't usually get games that are 6 hours long to the table. So it might not be a good fit for me or for myself. I am actually getting into Powered by the Apocalypse, Root, kind of still in process of reading that core book and making our characters and stuff. And tabletop RPG products are not always the thing that I'm just jump on, with a few exceptions, I guess, that I have on my shelf. But so I know maybe I disqualify myself as like, oh, it's a tabletop RPG. That's pretty cool, but it's not my thing. That's okay. That's actually a good thing. It provides me context. I understand what it is. I'm able to make an informed decision, say this is not my thing. But then in the exact same way, somebody who loves RPGs and hasn't, maybe they love Sea of Thieves or whatever, and they just haven't jumped into a pirate themed RPG. That's an immediate, I'm interested. And now I need to look at what type of game system is it and what type of whatever, but I'm very interested in the premise, and I'll click through to the landing page to learn more. And I think that's the whole goal, is that we just want somebody to learn more about something that initially interested them. And I have thoughts on the landing page, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts before we go there.
No, I mean, I can read the second one, because I think this one was probably more inspired by the back of the Pirates of the Caribbean DVD box. So it's experience thrilling high seas adventures. Take on the role of wily pirate rapscallions sailing the weird seas on stolen ships. Discover suspense-filled adventure, cursed treasure, sword-clashing action, mystery, humor, and unforgettable scallywags. What legacy will your scurvy-ridden band of ruffians leave behind?
That's awesome.
That was more inspired by
scallywags.
So, like, I can tell you what words I actually took directly from Pirates of the Caribbean. Suspense-filled adventure. I didn't come up with that. Cursed treasure. Sword-clashing action, mystery, humor. So all those words I took basically directly pulled them from the back of the box of Pirates of the Caribbean. So
yeah, I have the song, the Pirates of the Caribbean song, playing in my head right now.
Yeah, that was happening to me as well as I was writing this.
So that's pretty cool. I think that's a lot of fun. So now then, when somebody clicks through your ad, they click your ad to go to the landing page. A good ad will have a decent click rate, typically between 2 and 5%. Sometimes it's higher, and when an ad hits like perfectly. But when they get to your landing page, what, like, the mindset I think of a customer, I want to ask the question, but I also want to say the answer. But I'd like to hear your perspective on what is how do you answer the questions going on inside the customer's mind? It's like, what do they need to know next, and why do you emphasize the landing page designs that you do? Where do we go after the landing, after they click the ad?
Well, for e-commerce, it's slightly different than maybe like a regular kind of pre-marketing for your Kickstarter. With e-commerce, the goal is to make the sale, not to capture an email. So part of the ad is to qualify people. So I intentionally use the button shop now or order now, so that when someone clicks, they already are in the mindset of purchasing. So the ad should give them enough to say, oh, this is interesting, I might want to purchase this. So so I'm not trying to maximize the click-through rate. You can often have ads in e-commerce that have very low click-through rates, but they have high conversion rates because the people who do click purchase, and that's really what you're trying to get. So you might have something that's under 1%, could be 0.8, percent click-through rate, but it's making you a 5x return. And that's because you've qualified the people through the ad. That's also something to maybe keep in mind, even for your pre-marketing, is you kind of want to qualify people. And don't be afraid to say that this is a 15-hour game, because a lot of people say, nope, I'm out. I'm not playing 50-hour games, no matter how amazing it is. But you need to qualify people so that you can then get them into your system. It might reduce your click-through rate or even your landing page conversion rate or your cost per lead, but that qualifier is important to your final conversion rate. And that's what really matters when you eventually go to Kickstarter and people are backing. You don't want them to get to the Kickstarter page and suddenly realize, wait, this is a 15-hour game. You've just wasted all your time and energy. So I'd say that's probably the main thing with e-commerce. For email capture, you kind of just want to build upon what you've done. So let's say this was a Kickstarter campaign. We've kind of set the mood, haven't we? We've talked about monstrous creatures. Well, you'd want to show pictures of monstrous creatures. We've talked about deadly seas and weird creatures and cursed treasure. So you want to use imagery to show that and really just reinforce what you've just presented in the ad. And the next call to action is to capture the email. And then through your email marketing, you go into even further details. So it's kind of baby steps. Here's a little thing, here's a little bit more, here's a little bit more, as they kind of get deeper and deeper into your systems.
Yeah, I think also I'd love to take a little pit stop about something we really haven't talked about before, I don't think, at least, is the art that people use for their games. I think that people spend so much time, effort, and energy on the box cover art, which makes a lot of sense. It's the art piece that needs to sell your product beyond all else. You have to build the greatest amount of intrigue from what people see on the box art. They have to kind of be able to envision themselves in that scene, and they have to kind of almost get lost in the world, by looking at that art. It's a very very important piece of art. And then beyond that, I think sometimes people really mess up where they have like different artists doing their characters. We had this one game, I won't say what it was. It was probably like 3-4 years ago. But this one game where like the heroes had one art style and the villains had another, and the villains had like a very thick outline, like a stroke outline of the characters, and then the heroes had like a different type of shading, and it looked like two different artists made these things, and there was no collaboration at all between them, which is exactly what happened. But then when it came time to make the landing page, it was like, I don't know, what do we, I felt like I was putting like this art on like a popsicle stick and like showing you like, look, bouncing the character back and forth, like, look, he moves, and it just felt so cheesy and so cheap. And so when I get people into this really epic world, I'm going to use a different theme than the theme it actually was, for sake, because I'm speaking negatively about a product. But so let's say if it was a pirate theme, then I showed like a really, like, I don't know, Captain Jack Sparrow was like an individual art piece, and then you had, whatever the hero, I forget the names right now. Elizabeth, there you go, there's one. So you had like Elizabeth was done in one style and Captain Jack Sparrow was done in another. It's like, it just really kind of kills it. It ruins the immersion, is what it does.
Mm-hmm.
So if the box cover art looks beautiful and amazing, let me see that, and let me see things like that, and don't ruin the illusion. Because really, when at the end of the day, it's a game that's like a physical box I'm going to open up and pull parts out and try to play a game, and like while imagining cool things in my head. I'm not actually like, it's not the same as a movie, right? But like, you really ruin the illusion of like being in the world, like getting thrust into the world. You pull them back out of the world, and you're like, by the way, you're looking at several art pieces that have no that have no relation to one another, and I had to pay for art, and I had, it's like a I just think that a lot of people ruin this, the hard work that they did to get people there, with just pulling, like, breaking immersion, I guess, is the way that I'll put it, with their art. And I think that you should think about the art style that you're going to go for, and it should permeate everything that you do. I think that it makes it a lot easier as a marketer for me to put together a story that I'm kind of like building a story when I write an ad, use an image, and then get people to go to the landing page. I can use the exact same image to help them understand they're at the right spot and that it's the thing that they were interested in. And as you scroll down, it's nice to be able to see some continuity in the art and everything like that. So it's like it just kind of keeps me nodding, saying, yes, this is I'm still interested. I'm still interested. And now I learn the player count and I learn the other aspects of the thing. And it's not so I just there's nothing that should be breaking the immersion of the experience you're explaining the product in a way that they can visualize, and it makes them interested, in many ways. It's like like I had a consultation yesterday about a food product, some olive oil that is made in Italy and eventually going to go to Kickstarter. And um you want to make people hungry. You want to show people that this product is great, but look at all this, you know, great stuff you can put it on. And you show, like, we showed vegetables and we showed pasta and we showed like sushi, and um it those dishes were composed beautifully well and looked incredible and made me hungry. And the product is the olive oil that goes on top. So you can't I mean, if it was just like a very poorly put together piece of food that you're dumping olive oil, it's kind of gross, just ruins that vibe, if you will. And so I think that the intent is to be able to tell this one continuous story and don't ever break that level of immersion. It's like having an intermission in a show. It's necessary if it's a play and it's 3 hours long, and you've got to give people a bathroom break at some point, because there are other things that'll break immersion at that point. Having to use the restroom is one of them, right? And you know it's you don't want an intermission in your landing page, right?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, that congruency, is so important, because it's all those things working in tandem, and it even happens with your advertising generally. This is something that often we have to talk to our clients in terms of running meta ads for their campaign. It's not just about thinking about money in, money out for this specific campaign. We need to look at the big picture. Okay, how much is your overall advertising coming in? What's the overall outcome? Because there might be things outside of just this one little campaign that's influencing things. People could see it, share it with a friend. It could just be a second touch point that reminds them that exists. So getting that bigger picture is super important. And all these things work together to have the final result. So same with your game. It's your imagery, your ad copy, the gameplay mechanics. All those things work together to create a good product. And if you have an overemphasis on one while neglecting something else, you won't have a good product. Doesn't matter if it's really good mechanically. If it's got bad art, people aren't going to play it. This is the reality. Likewise, if it's got great art but mechanically it's just not doing anything impressive, well, people aren't going to stick around. They might purchase it and sell it off quickly. You're not going to be able to sell all your stock. So all these things work together to create a robust product.
Yeah, and something like, when you get people all the way to the end of the road, where you launch, let's say the end of the road as in like a pit stop, where you launch your Kickstarter and you need to fund or game found or whatever. Um Things like a very inappropriately high shipping charge break immersion. They break the illusion, and like, well, this looks cool, but I don't want to pay that for shipping. And you pull people into reality again. I would rather see, instead of a $60 product with $40 shipping, I need an $80 product with $20 shipping, or whatever, $15 shipping, and subsidize the cost of the product a little bit, and just make it reasonable. And I need to it's that illusion. It's almost like I think about Percy Jackson and the Olympians or whatever, where Percy and his crew go into this like casino. It's like the Lotus Casino, and they end up eating these Lotus cookies or something. And before they know it, they've been there for like 3 or 4 weeks and just, totally under this trance of the lotus flower. And something happens where a guy kind of like gets knocked out of the trance because something breaks his immersion. And he's like, wait a second, and they don't realize how long they've been there. And I think that the same can be true with a marketing campaign where you do all this work, you start with the ad, you bring them to the landing page, you get them on your email list, and then you kind of string them along with really great content that you write in your emails. And they're very, very interested. And then they go and see a terrible offer, and it's like, well, that's it. That the illusion is broken, and it's so hard to get people back when you've ruined that level of immersion. And we've had clients that have, thousands of followers, or I don't want to say we haven't had many. Most of the time, like, we will catch things like that. In fact, now we require a review of people's crowdfunding pages. We call it our hygiene test. We will review every one of our clients' pages for things like that, because we don't want people that are using our services get all the way to the end of the road and then flop
make
at
a
the
silly
very
mistake.
end.
Yeah.
Right. And so, that's one of the reasons most of our campaigns are great. Because, that's one thing that we are trying to help our creators ensure quality. And then, the unfortunate reality is that, many creators that have a really cool product that had thousands of followers, it's so easy to just mess it all up with a really, really bad offer because, you had limited time and you couldn't figure out shipping all the way, but, your backers expect that you're launching soon and all that. It's just like, man, what a tragedy in some cases. You see, fans, or you see like, sometimes campaigns will have 10,000 followers or more, 30,000 followers or more, even 3,000 followers, and get like a 5 to 6% conversion rate from those. It's like, man, that was the reason that you got such a low conversion rate, is because something was wrong that broke people's immersion and pulled them back into reality, and said, where they had to say the value is not great enough for what the cost is. And it's really, really unfortunate. But hopefully this discussion on kind of pulling people into your world and immersing people, and how to write great copy helps you guys. Any final thoughts, Sean?
Yes, well, if you want us to review your Kickstarter page before you launch, we'll put a link in the show notes. If you go to course.crowdfundingnerds.com, you should have a list of different course bundles. You can get one of them is this hygiene review that we do. So I highly would recommend that. If you don't get anything else from us, this would be well worth your time and money, because we do a deep dive. We review your page. We look at the copy. We look for typos. We look at your layout. We look at your pledges, your shipping. We offer suggestions, and we put that all into a neat PDF document, report that you just download, and then all that information is there. So I know people find that very helpful. I think we've saved a lot of campaigns from disaster just by making that a mandatory part of our service. So when people sign up for our meta ads, we include that in the pricing because it's needed. So if you are planning to go to Kickstarter, or you've got your page, you've been working on it, make sure to check out the show notes and pick that up, because it really will it could really make or break your campaign.
Yeah. Yep. Well, with that final note, we're going to have Robot Richard send us on out.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.
Hey, Crowdfunding Nerds, it's Andrew Lowen, and I wanted to introduce you guys to the Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. If you don't know, we have a do-it-yourself course system that will teach you how to build, excite, and prepare a crowd to fund you on your launch day, and that is our goal. I have used these systems to help raise over $30 million for tabletop campaigns, over 200 tabletop crowdfunding campaigns since 2019. I've generated over $100 million through e-commerce sales using these processes. These courses teach you how to replicate our results. They're made for the small creator. Over 150 of those people were first-time creators. These courses contain hundreds of hours of podcast discussions and tons of details that are almost impossible to find on the internet. And they have been distilled into concentrated courses that you can absorb quickly. They are designed to generate results. We hold nothing back. Visit crowdfundingnerds.com/academy to learn more, or just Google search Crowdfunding Nerds Academy.